it's just so instinctually natural for me to create the darkest thing that I can. It's just a challenge that I've put myself up to. The fact that I'm making the music that I've always wanted to make, and in this case, making the record that I've always wanted to make, really makes it all worthwhile to me. Somewhere along the lines of this LP, I was involved in some scoring work, and it really brought a lot to the table as far as the tone of this record and how visual I wanted to make it without it being a soundtrack for anything. The idea with records to me is active listening, and I think that's where the importance of having a collection of songs that has some kind of arc. And I'm not interested in making the same recording twice ever. So I think by releasing a bunch of singles first and doing some exploration helped me arrive on what the LP should sound like. It was just starting every day with just a literal clean slate and just kind of like go off into the unknown, and each and every day is just a completely fresh new idea. So I ended up with about 50 or so tracks over a 2.5-year period. So it was time for me to listen to those tracks and be prepared to go into those songs and tear them apart and bring out some new life into them. So I just spent a few days walking around with a very long playlist of 50 tracks and eventually narrowed that down to 30, and then eventually ended up with the 12 that are on the record. And that's what became the LP. I wanted to approach the recording of this record differently than I had approached any of the recording I've done for this project previous. And a big part of that for me was reamping synths and miking cabinets and putting synths through guitar heads. And I turned to a gentleman named Kurt Ballou, who has a great history of recording super heavy bands. I knew that he would bring something different to the table. I wanted someone with a different set of sensibilities than myself. Having someone else's influence or stamp on some of the process. Stuff sounds so live and in the room in his studio in Salem, Massachusetts. So I decided to go there for a few days and work with him, getting some really nice tones that I wouldn't have gotten if I had went direct with everything in my studio. After I returned home from Salem, it was time to really put all the songs under a microscope and mix up all the layers that I got there. I think I just needed to kind of immerse myself in that process and only do that for a few weeks, and I wouldn't let myself listen to anything else. Just kind of became so involved in it that the only way out at that point was through and to finish it and to have the project be my world. And it's kind of like I would imagine a method actor would do, where he kind of lives in character. I needed things to be that extreme to get my head around what I was trying to do and finish. A big part of this record is obviously the mastering process. I went to San Francisco to work with my longtime mastering engineer, Justin Weis, at Trackworks. Justin is a person I've worked with for years and always brings a certain amount of magic to everything I send him. And this was absolutely no different. My instructions to him was always not to be subtle. I wanted to hear a difference in what he was doing. I wanted to be just another layer of sonic characteristic on the music for this record. Tape is really important to me for a few different reasons, mostly because of the sonic patina that it leaves on whatever graces it. It just leaves a character that I feel you really can't get with software. So I wanted to make sure that tape was involved at various levels of this process, from my own production to the stuff I did with Kurt hitting tape, and then ultimately mastering to tape. So tape is just another voice in this process to me. When you put something down on tape and you kind of can't go back and change it, and it's just done and you have to walk away. I think there's a really big theme with this record, and that theme really influenced the title, and that theme is surrender. From the start of the creative process, I think those days you're surrendering too. You're just putting yourself at the mercy of your creativity and seeing how far that can take you. Calling the record True Surrender really summed up the way it feels to work on a project for a few years. At some point, we all have to surrender. Just put our art out into the world and let it go.